It all started on an ordinary day at a quiet bus station, until a group of arrogant bikers showed up, bringing noise and trouble with them. As they laughed and made a scene, their eyes landed on a lone woman sitting silently nearby. She seemed unassuming at first, a war widow with a heavy heart and a story written in the lines of her face. But when the bikers crossed the line with their disrespectful behavior, they had no idea they were targeting the *Ron* person. What happened next will leave you speechless. In a twist no one saw coming, the situation escalated in a way that would change the lives of everyone there forever. Stay tuned for a powerful story of courage, unexpected justice, and a lesson in humility that will keep you hooked until the very end. You won't believe how this confrontation plays out. The bikers, dressed in leather jackets and wearing cocky grins, reveled in their own bravado as they made crude jokes and loud remarks that echoed through the bus station. Most people kept their distance, afraid to get involved. But the woman they targeted sat perfectly still, her eyes calm but sharp, as if she was waiting for the right moment. Her hands rested gently on her lap, but there was something about her presence that seemed unshakable. The leader of the group, a tall man with a booming laugh, leaned in too close, taunting her with a smirk. "Hey lady, you look a bit out of place. Waiting for a rescue, or you just lost," he sneered. She remained quiet, her expression never changing. The silence only seemed to fuel their arrogance. But behind her calm demeanor, a storm was brewing, one they would never expect. Something was about to happen that none of them would forget. The air grew heavier as the bikers continued their antics, their laughter filling the station like a bad song stuck on repeat. Some passers-by glanced nervously, while others chose to ignore the scene altogether, hoping it would pass without trouble. The woman, however, remained as steady as a rock. Her eyes, cool and composed, flickered with something the bikers didn't recognize, something they wouldn't understand until it was too late. One of the younger bikers, eager to impress his friends, snatched a small object from her hands. It was a dog tag, weathered with time but polished with care. He dangled it mockingly in front of her. "What's this? A souvenir? Maybe we should keep it for you," he said with a smirk. Her hand reached out, swift and steady, reclaiming it with a grip that spoke volumes. For the first time, her voice cut through the noise, calm but razor-sharp. "That belongs to a hero." The bikers exchanged amused glances, their arrogance blinding them to the weight of her words. But something was shifting. Around them, people began to pay attention. The quiet dignity in her tone carried a gravity that hung in the air, warning of a truth these bullies were too foolish to see. The tension crackled, the moment teetering on the edge of something that couldn't be undone. The smirking biker narrowed his eyes, clearly not expecting any resistance. "A hero, huh? What makes you think anyone cares about that now?" He scoffed, tossing the dog tag between his hands as if it were a cheap trinket. His words dripped with disrespect, but the woman didn't flinch. Instead, her steady gaze met his, unshaken and full of quiet power. Other travelers had stopped pretending not to watch. A small crowd began to gather, sensing that something deeper was unfolding. A man in a worn-out suit glanced from the woman to the bikers, debating whether to intervene. A mother pulled her child closer, her eyes filled with worry. Yet in the midst of it all, the woman stood unmoved, her calm presence cutting through the noise like a blade. The biker grew bolder, stepping even closer. "You think you're better than us? What's the big deal?" he sneered. The tension in the room thickened, stretching like a taut rope ready to snap. Suddenly, the woman took a step forward. Her voice, still calm but now carrying an undeniable strength, sliced through the air. "The big deal is sacrifice. A sacrifice you'll never understand." Her words landed like a punch, stunning the crowd into silence. A flicker of doubt crossed the biker's face, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. "You've got a lot of nerve," he began, but before he could finish, a stranger stepped into view. His presence commanded attention immediately. Tall, broad-shouldered, and wearing a jacket with military patches, he stood between the woman and her tormentors. His eyes burned with quiet fury. "You're done," he said, his voice low but filled with unmistakable authority. The biker froze, his bravado faltering as he took in the imposing figure standing between him and his target. The man's sharp, unblinking stare was the kind that didn't need threats to command respect. The tension thickened as the leader of the bikers clenched his fists, a flicker of uncertainty flashing across his face. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially by someone who radiated the quiet strength of real experience. The war widow said nothing, but a subtle nod passed between her and the stranger, a silent exchange of understanding that spoke volumes. The biker scoffed, trying to shake off his unease. "What's this? Some kind of reunion?" He jeered, forcing a smirk. "You think you're gonna scare us?" The man didn't move. His voice, calm but cutting, carried the weight of a command. "I don't need to scare you. You're already out of your depth." Suddenly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his own dog tags, holding them up for everyone to see. The silence deepened. The crowd, now fully invested in the unfolding drama, watched with bated breath. The realization began to dawn on the bikers as they saw the unmistakable glint of recognition in their leader's eyes. Before anyone could react further, the sound of sirens echoed in the distance. Someone had called for help. The arrogant smirks vanished as the bikers' bravado crumbled. The stakes had changed, and the consequences were catching up. The leader stepped back, his confidence evaporating, but it was already too late to undo what had been set in motion. The bikers shifted nervously as the sirens grew louder, their earlier arrogance melting into fear. The man with the military jacket stood firm, his eyes never leaving them. The leader, his hands trembling slightly, glanced around as if searching for a way out. "Look, we didn't mean anything by it," he mumbled, his voice a far cry from the taunting tone he had used earlier. The war widow finally spoke again, her voice steady and calm. "Respect isn't just a word. It's earned through sacrifice. Some people give everything so others can have the freedom to act right or wrong. You chose wrong today." Her words hung heavy in the air, each syllable striking with undeniable truth. The bikers began backing away, but just as they turned to leave, the unexpected happened. The older man, with a measured calmness, handed the leader his own dog tag. "You'll need to learn the weight of this," he said quietly. "It's heavier than you think." The biker, confused, hesitated before reluctantly taking it. His eyes flicked back and forth between the widow and the veteran, suddenly overwhelmed by the gravity of the moment. "Why are you giving me this?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Because no one is beyond learning," the man replied. "And sometimes life offers second chances. What you do with it is up to you." As the sirens stopped just outside, and officers stepped into the station, the bikers found themselves facing more than just the law. They were now confronted with a choice, a chance to walk away changed or remain trapped in their own ignorance. The crowd parted as they were led out, silent but thoughtful. The woman watched them go, her expression unreadable but full of quiet grace. Then, without a word, she slipped her dog tag back into her hand, holding it close as the stranger gave her a respectful nod. No words were needed. The message had been delivered, and a deeper kind of justice had been served. As the officers escorted the bikers away, the bus station returned to a hushed calm. People slowly resumed their routines, but the atmosphere felt different. heavier with reflection, yet lighter with relief. The man in the military jacket quietly turned to leave, but before he could go, the war widow spoke one last time. "Thank you," she said softly, her eyes meeting his with a depth of gratitude words couldn't fully capture. He nodded with a faint smile, the kind shared between those who truly understand sacrifice. "Some debts don't need thanks," he replied. "Take care of yourself." With that, he disappeared into the crowd, leaving her alone again. But this time, there was a new stillness, not of grief, but of quiet strength and peace. The dog tag rested firmly in her hand, a symbol of love, sacrifice, and resilience. And as she boarded her bus, she carried with her a story of justice and dignity that no one would soon forget.